Hello, everyone. My name is Ezra, otherwise known as E-Soup. Um, it is snowing here right now, which is an unusual occurrence where I live in the South. And I went out in the snow earlier and everything, and it was very fun. And right now my internet is actually working. I mean, as evidenced by me being here on the stream. I'm hoping it keeps that up, because I was a little worried about outages because of the snow today, but so far we've been good. So this is an unusual stream time, so it doesn't look like anyone is here right now. Um, I kind of thought that that might happen anyway, so if, you know, at the end of the day, you can watch this as a VOD when I'm done, even if you're not able to make it today, obviously. But I'm gonna wait for like a couple minutes and see if anyone pops in. So just the usual things. Take a look at the trigger warnings in the description if you need that, if you somehow haven't already. And please give the video a like if you like what I do. Hi, Saikeen. Oh, no worries. That happens to me all the time. I like looked at the time and I was like, oh my god, my stream, I'm streaming today. I didn't forget, but like in the moment I almost did. So yeah. What else? We're reading chapters 34 to 37 today. And we ended on, I guess, a little bit of a cliffhanger where He and He requested Xie Qingcheng as his scene partner, and now they have to kiss for this class project video. Hi, Henry. And we left at that point. And of course, in He Yu's perspective, he's doing this to get back at Xie Qingcheng. But we know what this is really about. So I guess, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. We are on page 61. So we went ahead and acted out the scene. They're really doing it. As He Yu and Xie Qingcheng talked things over backstage, the cool director realized that they probably wouldn't be able to wrap up on time tonight. She tried calling the head director of this film anthology, Jiang Liping Laoshi. Oh wait, Jiang Liping is the head director? Did we know that? Did I just forget? She tried calling the head director of this film anthology, Jiang Liping Laoshi, in hopes that she could give the facility managers a heads up and extend the hours of operation for this auditorium. The call went through, and the director waited for Jiang Liping to pick up. Inside one of the university's hotel suites, Jiang Liping's phone, which was lying on the bed, started buzzing. But the phone's vibration was hardly worth noting, given the far more intense movements that were happening on the bed. The woman didn't pick up the call, preoccupied as she was with entwining her limbs with those of a man, a sensuous, intoxicated expression on her face. It was a long time before their movements finally came to a stop. If it weren't for that call you got rushing me, I could have gone for even longer, said the well-muscled man to the woman in his bed as he lit a cigarette. Jiang Liping leaned lazily against him, her eyes silkily coquettish. You've already wrecked me plenty. What more do you want? Flattered, the man chuckled, looking exceptionally pleased. How am I compared to your other men? Ayo, way to kill the mood, Jiang Liping pouted. All the other men come and go, but you're the one and only husband for me. I'm waiting for you to propose. The man felt like he was walking on air. He embraced her and said, They can't satisfy you. I'm the only one who's up to the task. In that case, Let's indulge in our secret affair a while longer while my wife's on her business trip in the United States. Zhang Liping giggled, her soft, full-figured body quivering. You've finally cheered up. Look at how distracted you've been recently. Hey, that was because of... At this point, the man shivered and stopped talking. Zhang Liping feigned ignorance, smiling as she nestled against him. Lao Gong, how dare you get distracted while I'm here? And Lao Gong is a pet name for one's husband. Why don't we play for a while longer? How would you like it? I'll give you anything you want. She successfully enticed him. The man swallowed hard, ready to roll around in the sheets with her again. You really make me forget my worries. Come on, baby. Come play with me. Smiling, Zhang Liping went to join him. In the auditorium, the director hung up once again. It's not going through, she sighed to the Xue Mei beside her, scratching her head in distress. So we have to hurry up. The uncle in charge of the auditorium is super nosy, ridiculously strict, and really hard to talk to. Tell He Yu to get moving. The Xue Mei replied, He Yu is trying to persuade Professor Xie right now. Persuasion? Hardly. The two of them were clearly in the middle of an argument. Behind the curtain, He Yu was assessing Xie Qingcheng's expression with a subtle smile. Never in his wildest dreams could Xie Qingcheng have imagined that He Yu would go to such lengths, and dragging him into it too? Hadn't that time in the hotel room disgusted He Yu enough? Xie Qingcheng said coldly, You want me to rehearse with you? Is that not okay? You're out of your mind. Xie Qingcheng made to leave. You asked for it. He Yu pinned him in place and stared at him intensely, as if he wanted to tear out Xie Qingcheng's bones and grind them all to dust. You'd better not think of escaping now that it's come to this. You're the one who wanted to torment me, so if there's punishment, you'll be enduring it right along with me. You're the one who started it by sabotaging my computer, Xie Qingcheng said. That pop-up site was an accident. I've explained this to you many times already. You were going through a midlife crisis at worst, but surely you haven't gone senile yet, have you? Henry. Oh, thank God we're back to the gay people. I mean, totally straight men. This was the type of beast Xie Qingcheng hated the most, acting all prim and proper, gentle and refined in front of others, not showing the slightest hint of it when he was upset in public, so that everyone thought of him as an exemplary youth. But the moment he had Xie Qingcheng backed into a corner, the mask came off and he'd spew round after round of bullshit. He never uttered any vulgarities, but his verbal abuse was 3 times as cutting than if he had. Xie Qingcheng replied coldly, You're the one acting like a fucking adolescent with an intellectual disability. Jeez, okay. He tried to shake off the hand He Yu had clamped around his left wrist. I don't have the energy to mess around with you. I'm not an actor. Go and find some little girl to act with you. How awkward would it be with a girl? He Yu said. Shouldn't a gay story be acted out by people of the same sex? Then scram and find yourself a little boy. What are you saying, Ge? None of them can compare to you. He Yu had really been driven to the limit by Xie Qingcheng's dirty tactics. He'd abandoned every shred of his facade in front of Xie Qingcheng. The way he said Ge, angry and scornful, made him sound exactly like a beast in human clothing. You really are. Xie Qingcheng sighed heavily, evaluating this brat he'd raised for 7 years through completely new eyes, too sick in the head. Completely sick. How did 600 Wanping Road let you out? There's a footnote. 600 Wanping Road is the address for the Shanghai Mental Health Center. He Yu pointed at him, his gaze drifting down. There was a touch of roguishness on his lips, unnoticeable at this angle to anyone but Xie Qingcheng. Look, you got so mad the Huzhou twang came out. Xie Qingcheng was speechless. You know, your voice is actually pretty soft, And when you speak in Huzhou dialect, it gets even softer. It doesn't sound like cursing at all. Doing this scene with me, doesn't it make you want to throw up? Xie Qingcheng asked, ashen face. Unexpectedly, this asshole smiled gently. Then his expression immediately darkened. I'm sorry I have to read this. Guh, even if I throw up, it'll be into your mouth. I won't waste a single drop of my vomit. Fuck you. He Yu turned the other cheek to Xie Qingcheng's vitriol, his smile never slipping from his face. Even more incredible, he remembered to remind Xie Qingcheng. It's your sister's film. Don't you want me to put on a good performance? I've already sacrificed myself. There's nothing wrong with sharing in my bad luck. Like I said, I'm sorry I had to read that. I was just like, damn, okay, Meat Bun. I shouldn't be surprised of all the places for Meat Bun to go. I shouldn't be surprised. Like, that's nothing in a Meat Bun book. Since it's Xie Shui's film, don't you want to perform well? Xie Qingcheng countered. Oh, I'm not so sure about that. He Yu drew away slightly and gazed down at him, the degree of sincerity in his voice difficult to parse. It's not as if I like her. We're just ordinary friends. So if I really got upset, do you honestly think I'd still think of her? When the time came, she'd be the one in trouble, not me. Xie Qingcheng glared at him. Peach blossom eyes met almond eyes as an undercurrent of violence surged between them. He Yu still had Xie Qingcheng's left wrist clamped tightly in his hold, the two of them locked in a standstill. He could feel Xie Qingcheng's pulse where it throbbed under his fingertips. Its rhythm vibrated through his bones, through the places where their skin touched, through his grayish-blue veins, and accurately and unerringly reached the very center of He Yu's nervous system. That's not gay at all. Fine. Clenching his jaw, Xie Qingcheng threw caution to the wind. Fine. All right. I'll do it. As he spoke, he nodded in a way that made it clear how long he would be holding this grudge. I'll fucking do it, all right? Are you satisfied? A hint of a smile unfurled across He Yu's face as he stared at Xie Qingcheng. It was a gentle smile, but for some inexplicable reason, it made one's hair stand on end. He Yu let go of Xie Qingcheng's slender wrist and reached up to help him straighten out the white lab coat and inner dress shirt that he'd pulled out of place. Xie Qingcheng allowed He Yu to adjust his collar, his eyes chilly. But let's be clear, this doesn't even count as an official rehearsal. That student director of yours is aware of this too, that this is just for you to get a sense of the scene, so it can't possibly be for real. It must be an angled shot. He Yu said softly into his ear, Sounds good. Holding you will be sickening enough. You think I'd want to kiss you for real? I think he's going to. Also, they said, no, we're not doing angled shots, so what are you talking about? Even in the rehearsal. With that, He Yu dropped his hands to pat Xie Qingcheng on the shoulder. His smile disappeared in an instant, replaced by a dark expression as he said, Xie Qingcheng, after this mutual torment is over, we'll be even. Let's call a truce, because otherwise I really will throw up. Xie Qingcheng thought, does stealing my lines get him an extra chicken drumstick for dinner or something? The two of them pushed aside the curtains and walked out. They both looked very calm, as if the intense conversation had never occurred. The rehearsal resumed. How much do you love me? What would you give up for me? Xie Qingcheng fired off one indifferent word after another with a stony, oppressive aura. He didn't seem to be speaking words of love at all. Rather, he was the spitting image of a household patriarch conducting an interrogation from the imperial preceptor's chair. It wouldn't have seemed out of place if he'd finished his speech with, if you don't explain yourself, I'll break your legs. For fuck's sake, I can't. The director facepalmed and was about to yell cut when the acting consultant stopped her. Wait a little longer. His scene partner is atrocious. There's no way. The acting consultant, a veteran actor, smiled and said, There's no need to rush. Let's keep watching. Meanwhile, He Yu was already responding to Xie Qingcheng's line, I love you a lot. Startled, the director turned back once more. Huh? It didn't seem as horrible as she'd imagined. It could hardly be considered a tour de force, but at least this time, He Yu's performance was watchable. Sorry, something just occurred to me. I feel like this is a very meat bun type of thing. In the future, down the line, however long it takes, when they actually get to the point where they actually care about each other and, like, admit that they care about each other, they're going to remember this. It'll be like, you know, oh, actually, I said I love you to you long ago. Remember, da-da-da-da. Like, this is going to be, like, I feel like in the future of this series, this is going to be, like, a moment that we actually get, like, emotional about. It could hardly be considered a tour de force, but at least this time, He Yu's performance was watchable. He Yu said, I love you a lot. I can give up anything if you just ask. Xie Qingcheng continued to recite his lines dispassionately. Then look into my eyes. He Yu really started to look directly into his eyes. That heated gaze was almost tangible as it slid from his brows to his nose to his lips, leaving a slight itch in its wake before it fell from his lips to his neck. Guh, I'm looking into your eyes. Through all this, Xie Qingcheng never cooperated in terms of his body language. So after staring at him for a while, He Yu suddenly lowered his head and pressed closer to Xie Qingcheng's neck, where his skin was like a thin sheet of ice, and his carotid artery lay just beneath. The natural self-preservation instinct aroused a sense of danger in Xie Qingcheng, causing his whole body to immediately tense up. He nearly abandoned the performance and pushed He Yu away, his gaze swiveling elsewhere. He Yu's lips stopped mere centimeters above the artery in his neck. You told me to look into your eyes, but why won't you look at me seriously? He Yu began to improvise, his warm breath carrying this question, as quiet as a sigh, into Xie Qingcheng's ear, boring straight through the pores of his skin and snaking through his arteries to slam against his heart. Xie Qingcheng's scalp went numb. The words, "Are you insane?" caught between his teeth as he swung his gaze around to glare at He Yu in disbelief. However, this was the wrong decision. Oh, Henry, I like your playlist suggestions. Cold as Ice by Foreigner and Cold Hearted Snake by Paula Abdul are going in the playlist. Yeah, good. I don't think I've heard like barely anything by Paula Abdul, but good. It sounds like a good choice. In all honesty, He Yu's delivery was quite good, even better than the acting consultant had expected. Originally, the old consultant had wanted to have He Yu change scene partners because he realized the great disparity between He Yu and his original scene partner's levels of immersion in their roles. His original scene partner was an openly gay man to begin with, and he was clearly interested in He Yu. However, because He Yu was unused to that kind of attention, he didn't even want to come into contact with the gay man. Under these circumstances, not only was it impossible for his partner's immersion to draw him in, but it would stir up strong resistance from He Yu and prevent him from entering the right mindset for his role. Just as a drunk person and a sober person couldn't converse on the same wavelength, what He Yu needed was someone who was at roughly the same level of sobriety to help guide him. And while Xie Qingcheng didn't know how to act, it was obvious that the effect he had on He Yu was stellar. He Yu wasn't guarded against him at all. Both of them were well aware of each other's sexual orientation. Sure, they were just two straight men, so regardless of whether they kissed or hugged, what feelings could possibly be involved? With this understanding in place, He Yu performed extremely naturally, so when Xie Qingcheng looked back at him, he met a pair of eyes welling with passionate emotion. He Yu tilted his head as he inhabited the role of that 15-year-old boy who couldn't control his secret love and desire. His breathing quickened, and his gaze filled with urgency, as his lips moved from Xie Qingcheng's neck to his mouth. He left a little bit of distance between them, but every trace of air from their breaths tangled together, like the strands of saliva left clinging to the lips after a passionate kiss. Immersed in his character, the teenage boy watched the man before him, his breaths hot and quick, like they were about to solidify in midair and sink viciously and deeply into his flesh and soul. Xie Qingcheng's entire body stiffened. Memories of that night in the hotel in Hangzhou resurfaced in his mind. When He Yu was drunk, he'd looked down at Xie Qingcheng with a gaze just as scorching. That heat and desire unique to young men was ruthlessly weighing him down. Emotions and experiences one wasn't familiar with would always be somewhat discomforting, and these eyes that were boring into him at such a close proximity and with such reckless intensity were unfamiliar to Xie Qingcheng in the extreme. Later on, Xie Qingcheng would numbly think that it was perfectly normal for him to feel so shocked, to become so incredibly tense that his face paled, and his entire being went on high alert, right? Why was everyone around them laughing? Okay, cut. The director was more than satisfied with this take, and promptly called things to a halt. A gloomy-looking Xie Qingcheng immediately pushed away this much younger schoolboy. The gentle look in He Yu's eyes also vanished in an instant. So I definitely thought they were going to really kiss for the rehearsal, but I guess that did not happen. He stared pensively at Xie Qingcheng's lips for a long while, thinking about God knows what. Then he looked Xie Qingcheng up and down a few times, a hint of a smile on his face. Do you always perform more passionately when you're hugging a chunk of ice? The director asked He Yu with her cheek propped up in one hand. She had been sitting with her eyes glued to the process the entire time. He Yu lowered his lashes. I might have gotten the knack for it. The knack was, he firmly believed that the more sincere his performance, the more he would disgust Xie Qingcheng. And looking at Xie Qingcheng's ashen face now, it was obvious that he had achieved his goal. The director was overjoyed. She checked her watch. It seemed there was still enough time to finish filming. Great. In that case, let's hurry up and do the actual take right now. Come on. She beckoned He Yu's acting partner over. Xiao Zhao, get over here. Let's try to get this done in one take. Everyone, double your efforts, before the auditorium closes tonight. Bang. Before she could finish speaking, someone threw open the auditorium doors. Everyone whipped around in surprise to see the auditorium manager calling out to them, huffing and puffing. We're closing! We're closing! Hurry up and finish your business. The director was pissed. Hey, our time isn't up yet. Look, there's still 40 minutes left. How is it? Before the manager could say anything, a chorus of flat, mechanical voices suddenly rang out through the room. No, we're doing this now. Oh, didn't I? Okay, meat bun. What are we doing? Drop the hanky. Set it lightly behind your friend's back. No one let him know. Everyone started in shock. This voice was simultaneously coming out from everyone's phones. Holy fuck, what's wrong with my phone? A video popped up. Mine too. I can't close it. What's going on? Xie Qingcheng whipped out his phone and unlocked it. It was still usable, as the apps were starting up as normal. But a pop-up window that he couldn't close had appeared in the upper left corner of the screen. Before he could examine it more carefully, a squadron of police officers in uniform marched into the auditorium. The leader of the squadron said gravely, "There's been an incident at the school, and there has already been one case of homicide. We will be enforcing a curfew tonight. So hurry up and get back to your dorms." The auditorium fell deathly silent for a moment, then everyone erupted into panicked screams. Sorry, I just turned the page and I just looked at the next chapter title. We're on page 73 for chapter 35, which is called, Another Murder Case. Also, Henry, I saw that. Ashen face. I wonder where the blood went. No, but seriously, this is not where I thought we were going already. We're very early in the book. Like, what is going on? Xie Qingcheng and He Yu were the last to leave the auditorium. By the time they got outside, the crowd of students was being herded towards the dormitories by the teachers and police. An announcement was blaring from the school's public address system. "Students, please remain calm and do not wander off on your own. If you are in a remote area, contact your teachers, roommates, and classmates immediately. Please return to your dorms in an orderly fashion." But the volume of the announcement couldn't drown out the racket that the students were making. Everyone outside had their eyes glued to either their own cell phones or the school's landmark, the Huzhou University School of Communications Radio and Television Tower. This tall building had been constructed by the school specifically for its broadcasting students. Faithfully modeled after a real television station, it was surrounded by lights that could illuminate the entire tower. However, at that very moment, the control system had been taken over by hackers who had turned the tower's exterior a glaring red. It looked like a sword covered in blood that had been violently thrust into the ground. The bold-faced text projected onto it could probably be seen clearly from several kilometers away. WZL. The Drop the Hanky Game of Death begins now. Henry, Hercule Poirot, if it was Toxic Yowie. Oh no. You're so right. In addition to the broadcast tower, the hackers' software had intercepted the signals of all the smartphones at Huzhou University. Everyone could still use their phones, but the little pop-up screen that had appeared couldn't be closed. In the darkness of night, thousands of these little windows transformed the Huzhou University campus into a fluorescent river of stars. It was just a shame that each of these stars was twinkling with a horrifyingly bizarre image. Xie Qingcheng looked down at his phone again to find that the words in that video were the same as the ones on the tower. They both read, WZL, the Drop the Hanky Game of Death begins now. In the video, though, below each letter was a group of extremely peculiar-looking electronic dolls. The little dolls sat in a circle, and there was a grinning, swaying girl doll standing outside the circle with a scarlet handkerchief in her hand, just like the Drop the Hanky game that children played. And there's a footnote. A children's game similar to Duck, Duck, Goose, wherein all the players but one sit in a circle facing inward. One player runs around the circle and drops a handkerchief behind one of the seated players. That player must chase and try to catch the one who dropped the handkerchief before the latter reaches the vacated spot. Below the W, the doll had already dropped the handkerchief behind one of the boy dolls in the circle. The little boy doll ran as the girl doll chased him with a smile plastered on her face. All of a sudden, the girl doll caught up with to the boy doll, cheerfully grabbed his head, and with a bright smile, twisted it off. A few seconds later, all the phones began to play a compressed sound file of a children's song in unison. Drop, drop, drop the hanky. Set it lightly behind your friend's back. No one let him know. The speakers of countless phones turned this nursery rhyme into a hair-raising chorus that echoed throughout the entire campus. The students became even more horrified and alarmed as they huddled together. Some even refused to return to their dorms, thinking that it was safer for everyone to stay together outside. Some of the more faint-hearted students had already started sobbing. Phones rang incessantly all over the place, overlapping with the song. These calls were all from the students' parents. In the age of digital communication, news of what had happened at the School of Communications had quickly made it onto various social media platforms and attracted a great deal of attention, causing a huge ruckus. Hello, Mom? I'm fine, but I'm so scared. Why, Daddy, I'm with my classmates. I won't run off anywhere. Amid this chaos, Xie Qingcheng, too, immediately called Xie Shui. Upon learning that she was at home making wontons with Auntie Li, he let out a sigh of relief. He explained the situation to her in simple terms, told her to mind her safety and stay at home, and made her promise to check in with him once an hour. Then, he hung up without wasting more words with her. After he ended the call, Xie Qingcheng noticed He Yu watching him calmly. When their eyes met, He Yu shifted his gaze away. Only then did Xie Qingcheng realize that no one had expressed any concern for He Yu. Oh, ouch. Practically everyone had received messages from their family or friends, but He Yu's phone had remained silent the whole time, like a pool of stagnant water, as still as the young man's expression itself. Xie Qingcheng was just about to say something when the Drop the Hanky song ended, and a huge photograph suddenly flashed across everyone's phones. The moment this picture appeared, Xie Qingcheng and He Yu heard a police officer next to them curse under his breath. Immediately thereafter, the furious voice of that police officer's captain rang out from his walkie-talkie. It's the fucking photo that the police just took as evidence at the crime scene. How the hell did they get their hands on it? This caught everyone's attention. The photograph in question was completely uncensored, and its contents were bizarre and extremely shocking. It showed the body of a man who had been strangled to death on a large, messy bed. The corpse's tongue hung out of his mouth, and he was completely naked, save for a pair of red heels strapped to his feet. This room, with its king-sized bed, was a familiar sight for the students. Wasn't this the hotel operated by the School of Communications? Sorry to pause in the middle of a really serious, gruesome situation and ask something, but is it common for, like, do Chinese universities have, like, on-campus hotels? Is this a thing? Because I'm like, what do you mean? Like a hotel, like, what? At the start of each school year, many parents who were accompanying their kids back to campus for registration chose to stay at this hotel. The environment was quite good, and anyone with the School of Communications student ID could get a discount. Like, that sounds like a really good idea, honestly. After welcoming the surge of parents at the beginning of the year, the establishment was sustained by the modest but steady patronage of students and their lovers. Okay. This time, most of the surprised gasps of "damn" that rose and fell throughout the crowd came from the male students. This was because the female students were a bit timider, and many of them were already tearfully covering their faces and looking away from this morbid picture. The boys tended to be more tolerant of these sorts of upsetting images, so many of them also recognized that this was the place where they'd often roll around in the sheets with their girlfriends. Fucking hell, that den of pleasure had now become the scene of a murder. How would they ever rent a room there again? Just seeing a similar bed would cause them to wilt. Young Master He had never been to a plebeian hotel like this one, nor did he have a girlfriend with whom to rent a room for the night. Thus, he knitted his brows, oblivious as to why there would be sexual frustration mixed in with the alarm in those cries of "damn" from the young men around him. However, he had noticed another detail in the image, disregarding the most recent quarrel he'd had with Xie Qingcheng. He turned around to look directly into Xie Qingcheng's eyes, and saw the same suspicion mirrored in them that he felt himself. Chung Kong Psychiatric Hospital. Now, were you not already thinking this when you heard the little Drop the Hanky song? Didn't that seem familiar? The modus operandi of this case was subtly reminiscent of the previous murder at that hospital. Very, very subtle. First, there was the clothing. Although both victims were undoubtedly male, they had been dressed in feminine attire post-mortem. Liang Ji-chung had been fully dressed in women's clothes, while this corpse was wearing red heels. Second, there was the music. Okay, yeah. Neither He Yu nor Xie Qingcheng could forget the song that Zhang Lanpei had quietly hummed in the office while she was dismembering the body. At the time, when they thought Xie Shui had been murdered, they had overheard the soft, eerily distant singing of that disturbed woman from the next room. Drop, drop, drop the hanky. Set it lightly behind your friend's back. No one let him know. Third, the letters WZL perfectly matched the ones in the mysterious message they had seen in the cave on Neverland Island. Fearful whispers swept through the crowd as more and more students realized the similarities between this homicide case and the way Zhang Lanpei had murdered her victim. Zhang Lanpei. Yeah, she was singing that Drop the Hanky song when she killed him. I read it in the papers. Aren't those red heels similar to the shoes Zhang Lanpei was wearing in that photograph published in the newspapers? My God. I've heard that shoes represent evil energy. There's a footnote. In Chinese, the word shoes is pronounced the same way as evil. I knew the word for shoe, but it's totally escaping me right now, but that's really funny. They can also symbolize sending someone off to their death. One student, who had likely become so scared that they lost control of their faculties, shrieked, "It's really Zhang Lanpei. Zhang Lanpei's vengeful ghost is out for blood." Their shout sent the crowd erupting into a frenzy. He Yu had mentioned it to Xie Qingcheng before. Because of what Zhang Lanpei had experienced, and the way she met her end, rumors had begun to circulate amongst the students at some point after her tragic death. Some claimed that if you wrote down the name of the scumbag who was troubling you, along with the cause of death, and signed it Zhang Lanpei, the woman's vengeful ghost would come and claim his life. This photo now undoubtedly corroborated this campus ghost story. Combined with the fact that the photo was now appearing on a countless number of phones, the students couldn't help feeling extremely disturbed. The police and teachers in charge of looking after the evacuated students watched as the scene before them became increasingly disorderly. They raised their loudspeakers and put their backs into yelling, "Quiet down, all students. Stop crowding here and follow your teachers back to your dorms. We will make sure that you are all safe." The students were driven forward like a flock of ducks, but their eyes remained fixed on the photograph of the murder victim. Because they were very sheltered in their everyday lives, the students had a very low tolerance for grisly images like this. Still, they found themselves incapable of tearing their eyes away. They were horrified and scared, but the more scared they were, the more they wanted to look. And the more they looked, the more worked up they became. Safely evacuating people during an emergency was a difficult task to begin with, but to make it even more challenging, the image on everyone's phones changed once more. The image of the murder victim disappeared, and the screen reverted to the WZL, the Drop the Hanky Game of Death has begun message. But there was a small difference now. Behind the W, the name of the victim, Wang Jiankong, had been typed out. The little electronic dolls playing Drop the Hanky next to his name had gone dark. All the smiling children playing the game had frozen in place. And the video had stopped on the frame in which the little boy's head was twisted off. And under W, Wang Jiankong, the electronic children beneath the letter Z, who had previously been still and unmoving, now began to spin rapidly. The little electronic girl grinned as she ran around the circle holding a red handkerchief. She lingered behind her friends, preparing to drop the hanky at any moment. The second round of the murder game had begun. Xie Qingcheng and He Yu met each other's eyes. The same memory crossed both their minds. That sentence, WZL will be murdered soon, that they saw in the guest book on Neverland Island. They had both assumed that WZL were the initials of a single person's name. They never suspected that it was actually the first letter of the names of 3 different people. W, Wang Jiankong, was dead. Who could Z be then? Just then, He Yu's phone rang. He froze in surprise. After seeing the name of the caller, he paused for a second before answering somewhat awkwardly. Dad. He Jiwei had just left the airport when he saw the news about the homicide case at the School of Communications and the strange video sent to him by his secretary. What's going on at your school? What's campus security doing? How could they allow this kind of thing to happen? He Yu didn't respond. Where are you right now? He Jiwei asked. Near the entrance of the school auditorium. I'll have Chief Lee send someone over to pick you up. There's no need. He Yu glanced around. People were packed together like sardines in a can. And besides, Xie Qingcheng was standing right there beside him. If a police car were to come and take him away right now, even if he didn't say anything about it, Xie Qingcheng would probably look at He Yu with even more disdain in the future. Like, the fact that he has that thought, and I know he thinks he's not, like, caring about Xie Qingcheng with that thought, but it's like, why do you care so much what he thinks of you, He Yu? Don't worry about it. A police car wouldn't be able to drive in here anyway. I'll head back to my dorm in a little while. But what if something happens? At this point, He Jiwei overheard the chaotic sounds in the background on He Yu's end. He stopped and sighed. Do you have any close acquaintances with you right now? He Yu glanced at Xie Qingcheng. He didn't know if the man could be counted as a close acquaintance of his, or if things between the two of them were still what they'd agreed upon before. The simple, straightforward doctor-patient relationship that they'd once had. Hello? He Yu, are you there? He Yu was just about to say something when he heard the voice of a boy on the other end. Daddy, slow down. I left something on the plane. I have to go and tell the flight crew. Upon hearing this, He Yu's expression cooled significantly. It's fine, Dad. There's someone I know here, he said, glancing at Xie Qingcheng. I'm with Dr. Xie. Xie Qingcheng? What are you doing with him? Is he treating you? To tell the truth, He Yu wasn't sure either. Ever since that time at the hotel, Xie Qingcheng had kept on nitpicking him without ever seeming to make a serious effort to address He Yu's mental state. But somehow, He Yu's condition seemed to have improved a great deal, as his attention was no longer completely focused on what had happened with Xie Xue. He hadn't realized it until now, because he didn't have much faith in Xie Qingcheng these days. He always felt that the man was giving him a hard time on purpose, so he could indulge in schadenfreude. But at this moment, it dawned on him that perhaps this was part of the treatment that Xie Qingcheng had been providing him with. Aside from physiological symptoms, psychological Ebola also had a significant impact on the patient's mental state. Xie Qingcheng did not ascribe to the school of thought that relied purely on medication for treatment. Rather, he placed more emphasis on guiding and establishing stability in a patient's inner world. It wouldn't be wrong to say that he tended toward idealism. This was also why Xie Qingcheng wasn't suited for short-term consultations, and was better at being a long-term caregiver. A therapist like him usually wouldn't repeatedly emphasize, "You are ill, so let's have a chat. You can talk to me if there's anything on your mind." When conducting a psychological intervention, he preferred to use methods that were the truest to life, and thus the least likely to be discovered. He always wanted the patient to feel that they were a normal person. Sometimes, when it came to psychotherapy, it didn't matter how specialized or superficially charming the doctor's words were when they interacted with patients. Rather, what really mattered was the degree of comfort the patient obtained, and how their psychological condition changed for the better. His recent squabbling with Xie Qingcheng had He Yu racking his brain to come up with solutions to the stumbling blocks the man had placed in his way. And in doing so, he had managed to move quite a ways out from under the shadow cast by his failed first crush. Grappling with this realization, he grew slightly distracted as he raised his eyes to look at Xie Qingcheng. "Why have you gone quiet again?" asked He Jiwei. "What's wrong now?" "Nothing." He Yu cleared his throat softly and shifted his line of sight away from Xie Qingcheng. "Yes, he's treating me." That Xie Qingcheng. In the past, we wanted to keep him, but he didn't want to stay and refused our invitation. Now he insists on volunteering. Xie Qingcheng is everybody's therapist now. He Yu could hardly tell his father that he was the one who had gnawed on Dr. Xie back at the hotel in the midst of a flare-up, provoking the good doctor to the point that he couldn't bear to stand by and watch anymore, and that was why he was looking after He Yu in passing. He's just treating me every once in a while," said He Yu awkwardly. "They're not regular appointments." He Jiwei paused for a moment. "Very well. In that case, you should stay with him. Don't go back to your dorm. There's nothing safe about a bunch of little kids crowded together. Follow your Dr. Xie and return with him to his dorm." "Dad, that's kind of inappropriate." "How is it inappropriate? He's been taking care of you since you were little. He wouldn't mind helping out with such a small thing." "He's not my doctor anymore." "Don't get things mixed up. People's goodwill exists apart from employment, does it not? Why else would he continue to treat you from time to time? Plus, his time with our family was perfectly pleasant, so why treat things as so cut and dried? If you're too embarrassed to ask, then pass him the phone. I'll talk to him." He Yu's younger brother's voice came from the other end of the call once more. "Dad, why are you walking so fast? Who is it? He Yu?" "I understand." As soon as He Yu heard that voice, he didn't want to listen anymore. "I'm hanging up now." After ending the call, He Yu looked over at Xie Qingcheng again and coughed softly. Xie Qingcheng said, "Your dad wants you to go back with me." "So you heard." Xie Qingcheng made a sound of assent. He and He Yu walked ahead with the crowd. The School of Communications campus had been sealed off by now, so Xie Qingcheng had no way of returning to Huzhou Medical School, but he could go back to Xie Shui's dorm. He had just spoken to Xie Shui about it, and he knew the code for her electronic door lock. With considerable difficulty, the two of them followed the jam-packed tide of people back to the dorm. Xie Qingcheng opened the door. "Come in." With the living room light turned on, the domestic atmosphere of the apartment washed away the ominous pressure that was everywhere outside. Even though the terror attack was still ongoing, an environment like this made it feel more like they were witnessing a fire from across the river, or watching a movie about cops fighting criminals. It wasn't quite so suffocating anymore. And because this was Xie Shui's house, the first thing that greeted them when they walked inside was a tea table covered in junk food and teddy bears. There were even 2 empty containers of cup noodles that had yet to be tossed. He Yu and Xie Qingcheng regarded the mess in silence. It really was very difficult to feel scared. Xie Qingcheng shut the door and loosened the first button of his shirt. Then, with a gloomy expression, he began to clean up after Xie Shui. He Yu looked at the living room, where there was barely any space for him to stand. He had been to Xie Shui's place before, but she'd always tidied up before inviting him over. He never could have imagined that the room might have looked like this before it had been cleaned up. It was practically comparable to a recycling center. For a moment, he actually found this revelation even more shocking than the photo of Wang Jiankong's murder scene. It was too hard to reconcile the squalid room with Xie Shui's usual fresh, clean appearance. He leaned against the doorway for a long while with his hands folded behind his back before cautiously venturing a question. Is she usually like this? She's always been like this. Xie Qingcheng was well used to acting like her dad. With an unfazed expression, he picked up a teddy bear that Xie Shui had tossed onto the ground, patted it clean, and placed it back on top of the cabinet. He Yu was speechless. Go boil some water and make 2 cups of tea, Xie Qingcheng told him. Okay. As He Yu made the tea, he noticed that Xie Shui had left 2 sets of teaware in the sink. The leaves still in the filter were black tea, which Xie Shui wasn't very fond of. Because it was for somebody else. Something flashed faintly through his mind, but before he could give it much thought, he heard Xie Qingcheng call out from the living room. Get the Tibetan tea on the 3rd shelf of the tea cabinet. I'll have that. He Yu assented, and instead of pondering what he'd found in the sink, he focused his attention on looking for the Tibetan tea that Executive Xie wanted in Xie Shui's cabinet, which was stuffed full of snacks and beverages. The room was tidied up very quickly. Xie Qingcheng knew what he was doing. His stern, distinguished, aloof appearance, which made it seem as if he were entirely disconnected from the mundanities of the human world, was just one aspect of his persona. It was only natural for a man who had raised his little sister, 8 years his junior, through thick and thin since he himself was still a teenager. By the time He Yu finished steeping the tea and walked out holding the tray, Xie Qingcheng was bending down to pick up the last pile of books that his sister had tossed on the carpet. His figure was bewitching when he leaned over, with his long, straight legs and narrow waist. And we take a drink. His clothes stretched taut when he reached down, and the lines of his slender but strong waist could be easily seen through his shirt. Seeing that He Yu had returned, Xie Qingcheng straightened up and put the books back onto the shelf before turning to look at him. He raised his chin slightly, indicating that little Secretary He ought to put his Tibetan tea onto the now sparkling clean tea table. I brewed the cold fragrance of snowy fields for you, Secretary He said. That's the one you wanted, right? Once Executive Xie had finished putting everything away and washed his hands, he sat down on the sofa and loosened his collar. Despite the walls that separated them from the commotion, they could still hear the raucous crowd outside and the blare of sirens. In fact, if Xie Qingcheng were to turn his face slightly to the side, he would even be able to see that blood-red tower, glowing like a sword of judgment through the living room window. Meanwhile, on his phone, the little girl dropping the hanky was still running in circles behind the letter Z. Hackers? Xie Qingcheng asked. He Yu nodded. Definitely. They've targeted all the mobile electronic devices in this area, in addition to the radio and television tower. Perhaps because he felt annoyed that both their phones were simultaneously playing this video, and perhaps because he had a competitive streak as a hacker himself, he opened his phone and started to type in some command codes. Interesting, he said softly after a few moments. They're using the latest equipment from the United States. I've encountered it once before. This equipment has a wide transmission range, but there's a bug. It's actually pretty easy to break through its control. He stared unwaveringly at the cipher-breaking code on the screen, trying to penetrate his opponent's defense systems. Sorry, I'm just gonna... Trying to penetrate his opponent's defense systems. I feel like that was on purpose. Because that's what he's doing with Xie Qingcheng too. Sure enough, He Yu's phone fell silent a few minutes later. Now that his phone was no longer subject to the opponent's signal transmission, he carelessly tossed it aside. It's that simple? I must admit that my skill isn't at the bottom of the barrel. Yu, who ranked among the top 5 hackers on the dark web, said modestly. I'm sorry, what? On the top 5 of the hackers on the dark web. When you say on the dark web, that's like everywhere. It's not just like on the dark web in China. It's like the whole dark web. Like just casual. They shouldn't have messed with me. Then can you block their transmission to this entire area? Yu smiled slightly. Not without the proper equipment. Besides, this case is under police jurisdiction. I could easily end up being the target of their investigation, if I get involved. And I won't be protecting your phone either. Let's keep it to watch the video. He had a point, so Xie Qingcheng acquiesced. Yu sat down facing Xie Qingcheng and asked, speaking of, do you know Wang Jiankang? Xie Qingcheng was a professor at Huzhou Medical School, and Yu assumed that Wang Jiankang was probably a staff member at Huzhou University. He was only asking casually, so it came as a surprise to him when Xie Qingcheng took a sip of his tea, closed his eyes, leaned back against the sofa, and said, I do. Yeah, Saikeen, I feel the same. It's like, I get it, willing to suspension of disbelief, but I don't think that's how that works either. It's always... It's just funny the way it's like, it's a system, it's the newest technology from the United States. And I'm like, do we even have the best technology at this point? Because I don't know if I buy that. Or, I mean, maybe it's not the best because it's easy to break through the system, but they're like, oh, it's like the newest technology from the US, like making it sound like a big deal. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Apparently they were supposed to be robots, and Meat Bun chickened out of an android sci-fi story. See, but... I just saw the cover of Volume 8 of this series, and I question whether she totally chickened out of an android sci-fi story. That's all I'll say about that, because I was like, what the heck is this? So I'm really wondering, like, where all this is going. So anyway, that was the end of the chapter. And it's time for me to take a break. So I'm going to take a 10-minute break, and when we come back, we'll be on chapter 36, which is called I Took Xie Qingcheng's Phone. So, I can't wait to get right back to it and find out what he did with his phone. Wait, you or Xiego was a robot this whole time? Well, that would certainly be something. But I'm not going to put anything past her. I'm not going to put anything past Meat Bun. I feel like anything could happen in this series. So yeah, I'll be right back. Hi, hello, I have returned. So it's still snowing, and it's been snowing, like, since, I don't know, the early morning or something like that today, and that really is not typical. Like, we're actually getting a real amount of snow, and not just, like, the tiniest little sprinkling on the ground, and it's, like, so pretty outside. I went outside earlier and I walked around a little bit, and then I was like, okay, that's enough of, like, being outside for the snow day for me, but, like, it's so pretty just to look at. But yeah, snow is, like, a novelty to me. And normally, like, the reason I went out of town last weekend, I went, like, further south, was because we had an ice storm, and that's normally what happens, is normally it's just ice. And no one knows how to deal with it, and the infrastructure is bad, so it's, like, all around terrible. But now it's like, oh my god, real pretty snow. So we are on page 89 for chapter 36. I took Xie Chingchung's phone. Obviously, he took it to play video games on, as all were saying. Oh, Henry, same, but I got real tired of it when all the snow got flattened into ice, and I slipped 5 times on the way to the bus stop. Oh, that's awful, I'm sorry. Yeah, that does sound tiring. Wang Jiankong, who was in his early 40s, had been the head of the Department for International Academic Exchanges at Huzhou University. Due to work reasons, he had a very broad network and often went out with non-university people for business dinners. Xie Qingcheng had met him a handful of times and found him very irritating. Subsequently, he went out of his way to avoid Wang Jiankong, so at most, he could only say that he knew him and not that he was familiar with him. I don't believe in the supernatural. His death very likely has something to do with Chung Kong Psychiatric Hospital. Xie Qingcheng took another sip of tea and said mildly, chances are it's linked to the matter of Jiang Lanpei as well. He Yu turned to get a glimpse of the broadcast tower. The Chung Kong incident has created quite the disturbance. This probably isn't as simple as just one psychiatric hospital. Xie Qingcheng didn't need He Yu to point this out. The perpetrators had the ability to take over the university's broadcasting tower, unlawfully force all devices within the transmission range to play the same video, and even steal photos from the police's investigation while the case was under such high security. At this rate, the chief of Huzhou City's Bureau of Public Safety was likely going to require an emergency trip to the hospital's Department of Cardiology. Psyche, you lived in Colorado during the winter for 6 months one year. Yeah, I I don't totally hate the cold. I like the cold because you can put on more layers and eventually not be cold. And I think it's just because I grew up in the South. I'm like, I prefer the cold to the heat in some ways because in the heat, when it's too hot, you can't really do anything. There's only so many layers you could take off. So I'm like, I don't like being cold, but at least there's something you can do about it. But yeah, the key is living somewhere that knows how to handle it because it snows here down south and everyone freaks out. Indeed. To pull something like this off, with such clear provocation, the sheer hubris of the person standing behind the scenes was obvious. Furthermore, this matter involved Huzhou University, where Xie Shui was currently working. As Xie Qingcheng thought this over, his head began to hurt. Without thinking, he pulled out a pack of cigarettes, but after glancing at He Yu and realizing that he'd probably take issue with it again, he ended up stepping onto the balcony. He Yu turned around when he heard the soft click of a lighter behind him, and he saw the faint flare of the flame against the dark of night. Xie Qingcheng held the lighter to the cigarette, and the soft glow highlighted the defined contours of his face and the length of his lashes, gilding him in a gentle veneer of deep crimson. Then he put away the lighter, and all that remained was the cigarette's flickering glow, just like a firefly. Xie Qingcheng smoked the entire cigarette. Then he coughed softly as he returned from the balcony and closed the sliding glass door behind him. I'm going to make a late-night snack. He still felt rather agitated and figured it would be difficult to fall asleep tonight, so they might as well eat something as they stayed up to see what happened. He asked He Yu, "Do you want anything?" "Caviar and sea urchin sashimi." "Fuck off. Anything's fine." With that, Xie Qingcheng went to the kitchen. He was very deft and neat when he cooked, as if he were performing surgery. Everything was in its right place, clean and tidy. As the sound of the range hood came on, He Yu looked down at his cell phone. His WeChat messages had exploded. They were mostly from his classmates' group chats, all of which were about the events that had transpired tonight. There probably wasn't a single person at Huzhou University who would get a wink of sleep tonight. Even if they stayed obediently with their friends and classmates inside the dorms, everyone's eyes were glued to the videos on their phones. Just who is Z anyway? Z must stand for the target's surname. Thank goodness I'm named Chu. I'll be fine. Wah, fucking hell, save me. My surname is Zhang. It's okay. Mine is Zhao. I've never disliked my name so much before. I won't be able to sleep either. There were even some dumbasses who had spontaneously created group chats for classmates whose surnames began with Z and L, saying that they could huddle together for warmth and comfort each other. Someone else pointed out, if Drop the Hanky starts playing again, that will definitely mean that the target has been murdered. My entire dorm is watching that Drop the Hanky video. It's so scary. The incident had also reached the top of the newsfeed. However, when He Yu tried to open the article, the browser only showed that the content had already been deleted by the original poster. The internet police were probably working overtime to remove the relevant messages. He Yu could understand why. The situation had spun out of control, and there were no answers to be had. How would the next step ultimately unfold? What were the underlying stakes? Who was involved? Nothing was clear. The authorities couldn't allow such news to spread so quickly, as it could very easily result in the unchecked dissemination of rumors and large-scale panic. He Yu had a family chat group, but no one ever really talked in there. He had good reason to suspect that his parents and younger brother had their own chat group with only the three of them. Either way, a lunatic like him would always be an outsider excluded from their family. But with an incident like this taking place at Huzhou University, Liu Jishu had nevertheless sent a message to the chat group. Your dad told me what's going on. Let us know when you get home with Dr. Xie. He Yu. We're at the dorm. He Jiwei. Send a picture. He Yu sighed. They thought he might be lying and were just asking so they could keep tabs on him. He got up and pulled open the door to the kitchen. Xie Ching-chung, my dad wants me to take a picture of you. Xie Ching-chung frowned. I'll just call him later. Yu was hoping he'd say that, as he didn't want to respond to this loving family chat group anymore either. He tossed his phone aside and walked up to Xie Ching-chung, who was currently making noodles. It smelled quite good. What are you doing coming in here? Watching you cook. I want to learn a bit. So Xie Ching-chung didn't chase him out. He was just about to make 2 fried eggs, but it was only after he cracked the eggs into the frying pan with one hand that he realized, distracted as he was, he'd forgotten to put on an apron. Though he knew how to cook, he hated smelling like grease and smoke. But he had to keep an eye on the eggs, so he tilted his head slightly and said to Yu, do me a favor. Bring me the apron and help me put it on. Yu was beyond words. He really had become Xie Ching-chung's little secretary. What are you looking at? Don't just stand there. Hurry up. There was nothing Yu could do but go and fetch the apron from behind the door. He could tell it wasn't Xie Shui's at a glance. It was a very clean and simple apron, probably one that Xie Shui kept around for Xie Ching-chung. How do you tie this thing? You've really never done a day of work in your life. It's not that I don't know how to tie it. I've worn one before, but I've never tied it for someone else. Figure it out yourself. Yu worked it out after a moment. This wasn't a difficult task, so he walked up to Xie Ching-chung and wrapped the apron around him. While tying it, Yu once again noted how narrow Xie Ching-chung's waist was. It had only been a detached observation before, but this time he was winding the apron strings around his waist and even tying a knot behind his back. Yu was a bit taller than Xie Ching-chung, so with Xie Ching-chung standing in front of the stove and Yu standing behind him, Yu was able to gaze down at Xie Ching-chung as he carefully tied the apron strings. When Yu looked back up, his eyes fell on Xie Ching-chung's bent neck. It was pale, nearly translucent porcelain in color. There was a tiny crimson mole on the back of his neck, off to the side. Yu had never looked at Xie Ching-chung's neck from this angle before. When he was younger, he hadn't been as tall as Xie Ching-chung, so he couldn't see it, and after they met again, he never had the opportunity to carefully examine the nape of Xie Ching-chung's neck. 'Cause why would he? Thus, only now did he discover that Xie Ching-chung's neck was quite beautiful. Instinctively, he said, Xie Ching-chung, there's a mole on the side of your neck. After a pause, he added, it's red. His voice was very close, and his face was all but pressed up against Xie Ching-chung's neck. There's art, by the way. Nape mentioned in Not QJJ. Oh, yeah. We got napes in this one, too. Like, look at this. Like, come on now. Yeah, for real. He's so oblivious. His voice was very close, and his face was all but pressed up against Xie Ching-chung's neck. Xie Ching-chung's masculine instincts made him feel a bit threatened, so he whipped his head around without warning. Dumb straight guys were really fucking dumb. Under these circumstances, he turned back solely because of his male sense of territoriality. He wanted to confirm his safety and create some distance. But this idiot straight guy hadn't considered, given the proximity of Yu's voice, not to mention his hands, which were at his waist helping him tie his apron, just how little distance there was between them right now. Yu's mouth brushed against the side of Xie Ching-chung's ear, and because neither of them reacted in time, his warm lips even touched Xie Ching-chung's cheek. The contact was as light as a dragonfly skimming over water. yet as awkward as a raging prairie fire. What a predicament. Silence engulfed the room. The side of the ear was an extremely sensitive spot for most people, and Xie Qingcheng was no exception. The contact was brief, but for just a moment, he felt that low, hot breath unique to boys and the pressure and sense of aggression from the intensely hormonal young man behind him. Xie Qingcheng coldly pushed at He Yu's chest, shoving him away. Both their faces darkened. They stared at each other, but neither knew what to say. I'm sorry? But Xie Qingcheng had turned his head of his own accord. There was no chance that He Yu would apologize, and even less of a chance that Xie Qingcheng would do the same. What are you doing? It was so obvious it didn't even merit a question. This was just a tragic coincidence caused by a straight man's idiocy. They regarded each other awkwardly for a while until suddenly a strange smell came from the frying pan. He Yu snapped back to his senses. It's burning, it's burning. Xie Qingcheng immediately turned back around, and sure enough, the eggs had already turned black on one side. Since he first started frying eggs at the age of 8, Xie Qingcheng had never once burnt one. It really was his unlucky day. Suppressing his anger, Xie Qingcheng moved the frying pan aside before turning to He Yu. What are you doing standing in here? Get out. After he finished speaking, he took out a moist kitchen towelette and with a chilly expression, wiped the side of his ear and his cheek where He Yu's lips had touched him. He Yu was speechless. An accidental brush of the lips like this was different from the scene he had acted out earlier as an intentional prank. He Yu also felt a bit uneasy, so he bowed his head and left without another word. Returning to the living room, he felt discomfort settle in his heart. The look in Xie Qingcheng's eyes, his obvious distaste and scorn, had been much too cold. He Yu didn't like this feeling at all. Xie Qingcheng had held him in check ever since he was young. When He Yu met Xie Qingcheng again as a university student, he had sought to slowly remedy the psychological shadows Xie Qingcheng had cast since his childhood, going so far as to take charge on multiple occasions as the instigator of their interactions. But because of that look in Xie Qingcheng's eyes just now, He Yu found himself instantaneously plunged back into his memories. Xie Qingcheng was still Xie Qingcheng. He would still use that dagger-like gaze to coolly and scathingly look down on He Yu's entire being. In reality, Xie Qingcheng still occupied a position of absolute dominance. Just as He Yu was grappling with these thoughts, a phone suddenly rang. Thoroughly distracted and assuming it was He Jiwei calling him back after running out of patience, He Yu picked up the call without thinking. Hello? Hello? Xiege, I just got back to my phone after finishing my assignment and saw that something happened near your school. Hang tight for a bit. I'm coming over right now. I'm pretty worried about you. He Yu held the phone a little further away from himself. He abruptly realized that he had accidentally grabbed the wrong phone and picked up Xie Qingcheng's call. The caller ID showed that it was someone named Chen Man. Based on his voice, he sounded like a flustered and impatient young man. And with the word "ge" spilling out every time he opened his mouth, his manner of speech was easygoing and intimate. He Yu and Chen Man had met before. The two of them had eaten dinner with Xie Qingcheng in the dining hall and chatted for quite a while. But unfortunately, neither of them had introduced themselves by name back then. A decent amount of time had passed since, too, and voices always sounded slightly distorted over the phone. Thus, neither of them managed to identify the other through the call. For some reason, He Yu felt rather uncomfortable. He glanced at Xie Qingcheng, who was still in the kitchen, cleaning the pan to fry 2 more eggs. Then he got up and walked out onto the balcony. Why aren't you saying anything? You... He Yu pulled the balcony door shut and asked with utmost politeness, May I ask who's speaking? Huh? You're not Xiege. The other man sounded dumbfounded. Who are you? I'm Dr. Xie's friend. Oh, then can you get my Ge to pick up the phone? He Yu smiled, but his voice grew colder as he said, I don't believe Xie Qingcheng has a younger brother. What kind of relative are you? I've never heard him mention you before. Chen Man paused. He wasn't stupid. He could tell that the other person was nitpicking on purpose. Officer Chen was a policeman, after all. He was always the one interrogating others. He had never encountered someone with the gall to come up to him and begin grilling him straight away instead. Not to mention, upon listening more closely, it sounded like the other person was a young man around his own age. Staying with Xie Qingcheng at this hour after something like this had just happened. Who could this young boy be? Chen Man couldn't think of anyone right now, having forgotten the person he'd gotten along with so well over the course of their shared meal. He became guarded and suspicious toward He Yu. And who are you? Which friend? Xie doesn't have very many friends. I'm pretty sure I know all of them. He Yu smiled as he looked out at the scarlet broadcasting tower, its light making his pupils seem rather distant. There was no need for him to introduce himself, but still he said, I'm He Yu. He's never mentioned you to me before. He Yu's expression remained unchanged. He gazed at the tower as if he wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. He suddenly realized that his and Xie Qingcheng's social circles didn't overlap very much. This Chen guy. He Yu, what's going on? The sliding door behind him was abruptly pulled open by Xie Qingcheng. A call came for you. I picked it up by accident. Who is it? Xie Qingcheng asked. Chen Man. The moment Xie Qingcheng heard the name, he went over and took the phone from He Yu. Then he turned around and went back inside the apartment to take the call. He Yu watched him in silence, rooted in place. Xie Qingcheng was an indifferent person, not inclined to express interest or concern toward other people. Other than Xie Shui, there was pretty much no one who could get his undivided attention. But this Chen Man seemed to be an exception. Inexplicably, He Yu began to feel even more unwell. That's a good question, Saikeen. I've cooked eggs before. They don't burn that bad that quick. Like, how long were y'all staring at each other? That was the end of the chapter. We're on page 101 for chapter 37, which is called His Parents Were Killed in the Crash. So we're gonna talk about that, I guess. Your friend? He Yu asked without preamble once Xie Qingcheng had hung up the phone and returned to the room. Xie Qingcheng hadn't planned on offering He Yu much of an explanation. Given the stereotype that important people were afflicted with short memories, he expected He Yu to have already forgotten about Chen Man, someone with whom he had only shared a single meal by happenstance. So he simply replied, more or less, yeah. He said he just got off work and wanted to come over. I told him no. Is it that weird? Like, it's not hard to just be like, yes, we all ate together one time. Remember? Like, they're just definitely digging like holes for themselves by like not bringing this up. And then, well, or I guess He Yu really wouldn't have any way of knowing at this point, and like Chen Man didn't like identify himself, but besides his name, but still, I'm just like, come on, guys. Having dismissed Chen Man, Xie Qingcheng brought the noodles he'd finished cooking out of the kitchen. As Xie Qingcheng busied himself, young Master He stood off to the side watching as if he were some big shot. He had no intention of stepping forward to help. He only wanted to find out more about Chen Man. Why would he be so eager to see you? He pressed. I already said, he's my friend. He's pretty young, isn't he? How old is he? Around your age. Professor Xie has so many friendships that transcend age, He Yu said. Isn't your generation gap a problem? Xie Qingcheng felt that He Yu was being ridiculous, so he set his chopsticks down with a clatter and said coldly, do you think you can just interrogate people as you please? You're so nosy. What does my social circle have to do with you? He Yu stopped speaking. It was true. It wasn't really his business. Now that he realized what he'd been doing, it occurred to him that he was actually acting kind of unhinged. Why should he worry about these sorts of things? Xie Qingcheng pushed a bowl of noodles topped with an over-easy egg in front of He Yu. Eat your food. I'm going to call your dad. Meanwhile, in one of Huzhou University's teaching buildings, Zhang Yong was huddled in the pitch-dark corner of an office, with the door securely closed. Oop, this man's dying next. Large beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. He wiped at them with a handkerchief, but the fabric was already drenched to the point where liquid could be wrung out of it. His pig-like mung bean eyes were fixed on the metal door, the only entrance to this room. He had been staring at it for a very long time. Ever since the photograph of Wang Jiankong's corpse had been revealed, he knew that he would be the next target. After all, he too had taken part in designing those victims of biological experimentation who had been dragged to Chongkong Psychiatric Hospital against their will. He had also taken his share from those women who had lost their mental faculties and become part of the unspoken transactions of power and sex when those men were cutting important deals. The psychiatric hospital had some truly beautiful patients, too, some of whom had even been Huzhou University students who'd been conned into receiving treatment there. Those women were well-behaved and obedient, arousing the desire to violate them in many men, and they made for safe options. Hardly anyone paid attention to their psychological states or took their words seriously. Some of these women were tormented to the point of insanity, even becoming amnesiacs who completely forgot the things those men did to them. If they became pregnant, that was no big deal either. Those men had worked with Liang Jicheng for many years, and Liang Jicheng understood very well how such things should be dealt with. He knew how to seek out discreet researchers to clean up the evidence of the crime. However, he wasn't the one who had wanted to do those depraved things in the first place. Sure. It was clearly that old senior of his who had dragged Zhang Yong into it, enticing him with immense benefits and a wellspring of carnal pleasures. That senior made him handle the affairs, saying that they were all brothers in the same boat. If anything were to happen, they would bear the responsibility together. Oh no, Henry, I'm so sorry. Your Wi-Fi cut out for 2 seconds. How did we get here? It didn't take very long to get here, unfortunately. But Zhang Yong is scared because he knows he's going to be the next murder victim. And he's in one of Huzhou University's teaching buildings right now. And this is the stuff that he's been up to. After Chongkong Psychiatric Hospital had burned to the ground, that man had even comforted them, saying that everything had been cleaned up properly. He had assured them that at most the investigation would stop at Liang Jicheng's level. And as for the rest, dead men could tell no tales, so they didn't need to worry. But Wang Jiankong had met a terrible, sudden end just like that. Zhang Yong's own surname, and that of another one of his brothers, had also been displayed in that murder video, followed by the terrifying insinuation of that drop the hanky game. When Zhang Yong first caught sight of the broadcasting tower, he had just come out of a teaching building. He was immediately frightened out of his wits. As he frantically ran off, he called that senior of his in a panic. The call went through. Zhang Yong heard pleasant, relaxing music in the background, and the indistinct voice of a foreign masseuse asking how much pressure she should use. Their lives were about to be brought to a grisly end, and this guy was still at the spa. Hello? Hello? Zhang Yong's eyes were practically bugging out of his head from hatred and fear. Although he lowered his voice, it was impossible for him to suppress his fury, much less control his terror. Hello? Oh, the man on the other end chuckled, Director Zhang, it's late. Is something the matter? Zhang Yong was so irate that every blood vessel in his brain was about to burst. With his voice warped with rage, he said, "Who are you trying to fool? Wang Jiankong is dead. He's dead. You said Chung Kong was cleaned up already and told us not to worry. So what's happening right now? Tell me." That feels good. A little harder near my shoulder, the man said in English to the masseuse. Then he spoke once more to Zhang Yong in an exasperatingly slow voice. "My friend, Chung Kong has already been cleaned up. But the dogs are still sniffing around over there and won't let people off the hook. They insist on scenting the trail of blood and following it to our front door. So what do you think we should do?" "Don't you care?" Zhang Yong cried. "You have to come up with something. You're the one who benefited the most from this. You..." The other man cut him off with a laugh. "Director Zhang, most things in this world aren't fair. You're an adult. Shouldn't you understand that?" Zhang Yong was drenched in sweat. Staring at his phone, he realized that this person wouldn't lift a finger to help him. He might even end up harming him. A situation like this was merely the inevitable outcome of trying to convince a tiger to sacrifice its own skin. Zhang Yong gazed up at that blood-red television tower as if he had just awoken from a dream. He tossed his cell phone into a thicket of trees so that no one could use it to track him, then sprinted frantically back into the teaching building. Now he was shivering in one of its offices. Huzhou University had so many buildings. There were probably thousands of offices and classrooms in total. He had even taken off his GPS smartwatch, so he felt that he should be safe hiding in this room. If he made it through the night, he would turn himself in to the authorities. He would stop indulging in wishful thinking. If he turned himself in, he might be able to receive a reduced sentence. That would be far preferable to the end. Oh no. Wait, hello? Can y'all see me? Hear me now? I don't know what's happening at the moment. I don't know if I need to set my router on and off. Are we back? You can see me now? Because I see the little loading bar circling around, so I don't know what that means. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna check my connection and see what's happening right now. No, it's supposedly okay, so I don't know what YouTube is doing. It's working for you at the moment? Because I just have, like, the spinning circle of death on my little video preview, so that's weird, but okay. Where did it blip out? I guess, let's see. I'll just start a little higher up the page. Now he was shivering in one of its offices. Huzhou University had so many buildings. There were probably thousands of offices and classrooms in total. He had even taken off his GPS smartwatch, so he felt that he should be safe hiding in this room. If he made it through the night, he decided, he would turn himself in to the authorities. He would stop indulging in wishful thinking. If he turned himself in, he might be able to receive a reduced sentence. That would be far preferable to the end that Wang Jiankong had met, stripped naked and strangled to death. The memory caused Zhang Yong to shudder again. He thickly swallowed a mouthful of saliva, imagining that he could almost see Jiang Lanpei's silhouette swaying before him, a ghostly woman in a red dress and red shoes who had come to take him away. "Pa," trembling in a small voice, he tried to encourage himself. Pa, what are you thinking? It can't be a ghost. There's no such thing as ghosts." But as if to refute him, the sound of a woman's quiet laughter suddenly rang out in this locked room. Hee hee. Zhang Yong jumped to his feet, his features twisted in fright. "Who's there? Who?" But silence fell again, as if that soft laughter had been a figment of his imagination. Is the signal still good for y'all? I'm getting like a bitrate warning, but like it's not really making sense right now because I it's like the bitrate I always set and it's telling me that it's lower than recommended, but it normally doesn't, so I'm like, please internet, please hold through. Please carry on. Zhang Yong's flabby, sweaty back was pressed up against the icy wall. He'd chosen this office on purpose, as it had no windows, just a single door. The room was tiny. It didn't even have a cabinet for someone to hide in. Where did that sound come from? Zhang Yong was completely soaked in sweat, like a fish freshly hauled out of the water, and his heart was about to thump right out of his mouth. And then, just like in a murder game that demanded a ceremonial segment, that music started up again. Drop, drop, drop the hanky. Set it lightly behind your friend's back. No one let him know. But Zhang Yong didn't have a phone on him. Where was this tinny electronic music coming from? Where was the phone? He comforted himself with his last shred of hope. Did someone leave their phone behind in this office? Zhang Yong struggled to stand as he sought out the source of the sound. Slowly, he moved his eyes, which were bulging like a bullfrog's, up toward the ceiling, and looked overhead. His scream was so loud it could be heard throughout the entire teaching building. The song was coming from the air conditioning access panel. The vent had opened at some point. A dark-haired woman in a red dress was sitting in the crawlspace and looking down at him indifferently. She smiled faintly. Zhang Yong had heart disease to begin with. At this moment, his face immediately blanched, turning as pale as a ghost, and his lips rapidly tinted blue. His Buddhist amulet bounced against his portly chest as it rose and fell in violent heaves. Suddenly, his breath caught. Clutching his sternum, he backed up 2 steps and collapsed to the ground with a thud. The ceiling of the teaching building had a series of horizontal rafters with a large, hollow space above. The students had gotten used to hearing cats and mice scampering about up there. As for the air conditioner, it was an old-fashioned model with a removable outer case that covered the maintenance access panel. Zhang Yong hadn't realized that the crawl space up there was large enough to comfortably fit a person. The woman jumped down from the access panel, a cold, gleaming dagger in her hand. It's you. Despite being terrified out of his wits, Zhang Yong still managed to recognize the woman's face. It was indescribably delicate and beautiful. But right now, in his eyes, this was the face of a malevolent spirit that had crawled out of hell. Zhang Liping. It was Zhang Liping. Since you've seen my face, you won't live past today. Zhang Liping approached him with a smile. How would you like to die? A knife? A gun? Either would be very quick and easy. You're with them? You're not just a slut, you also work for them. That's right, I'm with them. Zhang Liping smiled sweetly. Why else would I willingly spend all my time hiding among greasy old sleazebags like you? Zhang Yong backed away, step by step. Clutching his chest, he stumbled backward and caught a glimpse of the room's metal door behind him in his peripheral vision. Then, bang! He had no idea where he found the energy. Perhaps it stemmed from his bone-deep desire to live. But somehow, he broke into a mad sprint like a wild animal, violently crashing through the door and tearing his way out of the building. Zhang Liping's eyes dimmed. Zhang Yong was running away? Even so, it didn't matter. This area was already surrounded by perilous traps at every turn. He had merely chosen a different manner of death. Zhang Liping knew that there was no need for her to pursue this man who had already gone half mad. And she couldn't go after him anyway, given the police presence outside. Why else would she have chosen to sneak in via the ceiling crawlspace? She pressed a custom microphone to her scarlet lips and spoke softly into it. Oh no! Why Wait, are y'all... Can y'all see me, hear me? Okay, it said it was disconnected for a second, but we're back again. I don't know why it keeps doing this, but my internet is still on, I think. Did you guys miss anything? I was just at... Zhang Yong was running away. Even so, it didn't matter. This area was already surrounded by perilous traps at every turn. He had merely chosen a different manner of death. It keeps blipping a bit, but coming back. Are you, like, missing anything when it blips like that? Let me do one thing. Let me see if something will help. Okay. I just made my bitrate a little bit lower. I don't think it's coming through as high as it's supposed to anyway. But okay, you're not really missing anything, so that's good. This area was already surrounded by perilous traps at every turn. He had merely chosen a different manner of death. Zhang Liping knew that there was no need for her to pursue this man who had already gone half mad, and she couldn't go after him anyway, given the police presence outside. Why else would she have chosen to sneak in via the ceiling crawlspace? She pressed a custom microphone to her scarlet lips and spoke softly into it. Laoban, Zhang Yong escaped from classroom 4406. He left in the direction of door 3. I'm leaving through door 6. Send some of your people to come pick me up. Even though he was practically pissing himself in terror, Zhang Yong managed to escape from the teaching building. Drawn by the sounds of his screaming and flailing, the police rapidly approached his position in their patrol cars. Zhang Yong never could have dreamed that there would come a day when police sirens, which were once his worst nightmare, would end up sounding like divine salvation. Sweat was dripping down his face as he shouted himself hoarse. Help! Help! I surrender! I have information to give. Save me! There's a murderer inside that building. He gasped for breath as he ran, his amulet swinging against his chest. Even now, he hadn't discovered the faint electronic glow flashing from the tiny hole in the talisman. Oop. Knowing he had sinned, he prayed to the gods with guilt in his heart. But what did his prayers bring? Unfortunately, only demons and monsters. The conspirators' plan had been set in motion long ago. The moment you knelt to seek help from the gods, there would already be a pair of eyes watching you, observing your weakness and hesitation. Zhang Yong was the organization's rotting meat, bound to be cut away sooner or later. Save me! Save! Ah, help! His screams brought the band of policemen on duty running over to him at once, armed to the teeth. Zhang Yong's eyes gleamed intensely as he used all his strength to run toward the police. He was like a drowning person trapped in a tempest, swimming desperately for the shore. He didn't want to die. He didn't want to die. He was almost there. Almost. He could already see the nervous but resolute face of the nearest policeman. Weeping, he stretched his hand out. Save me. I'll talk. I'll tell you everything. Bang. A deafening, hair-raising noise abruptly cut off his outpouring of secrets. It was followed by a moment of deathly stillness. The instant Zhang Yong ran through the intersection, moments before he could reach the police, one of the dining hall's refrigerated trucks parked next to the junction suddenly roared to life. It surged forward, crashing into Zhang Yong just as he was about to surrender himself. Everyone couldn't help but stop in their tracks to stare, wide-eyed, as Zhang Yong flew through the air and bounced off the wall with a thump. With an audible crack, his skull split open, and blood splattered everywhere. Even before his flabby body smashed into the ground, Zhang Yong had already breathed his last. The corpse was briefly illuminated by the truck's headlights before the vehicle rolled over the body, promptly flattening half of what was once Zhang Yong beyond recognition. After a few moments of horrified silence, a sharp-eyed police officer suddenly called out, "Captain Zheng." His voice was tight from the tremendous shock he had just received. "Quick, look. There's no one in the driver's seat of that truck. There was no one driving it. The truck moved on its own. How did it happen?" The police officer overseeing this unexpected case was Zheng Jingfeng, a veteran criminal investigator. He was standing close to the intersection and happened to get a crystal clear view of the scene. As he watched, the old investigator suddenly remembered something. A case from 19 years ago that seemed to be replaying itself in front of him. As those wretched images from the past flashed before his eyes, Zheng Jingfeng's expression suddenly changed. He yelled at the top of his lungs, "Get down! Everybody get down!" The sound of a colossal explosion rang out as flames suddenly erupted from that driverless refrigerated truck. Within seconds, the entire front of the truck was engulfed in a furious inferno. Sputtering and coughing, Zheng Jingfeng pulled himself up from the ground. He gasped for breath as he looked toward the flaming steel machine. The driverless vehicle, its cabin that spontaneously caught fire after hitting someone, and the body on the ground that had been partially crushed. In the light of the flames, the expression on the old criminal investigator's face turned extremely ugly. It was as if he had been transported back to that day 19 years ago. Oh, this is the thing. This is the crash. This is Xie Qingcheng's parents being killed in the crash. This is what we're flashing back to. Okay, I'm locking in. The scene before his eyes now was almost exactly the same as that day. The only difference was that the people who had lain beneath the wheels of the vehicle back then had been two of his close colleagues, a husband and wife duo, Xie Ping and Zhou Muying. Drop the hanky. Set it lightly behind your friend's back. No one let him know. The second mark was dead. Once again, from countless mobile devices, the gently sinister nursery rhyme reverberated through the air over Huzhou University. The entire campus resembled a giant's roiling belly. After a few beats of silence, it began churning as an untold number of teachers and students cried out in alarm like an earth-shattering, deafening sound wave rumbling across the university. Countless heads bowed as everyone stared down at their cell phone screens in fright. The little electronic figures standing behind the letter Z stilled as the girl caught the boy. The boy collapsed to the ground, a bright red handkerchief lying behind him as flames erupted over his body. A few seconds later, the murder video changed once more. This time, what appeared was another photograph, a close-up shot taken from above using a telephoto lens. This one showed tongues of flame swallowing the front of a refrigerated truck. Zhang Yong's corpse lay before the fiery beast, half of his body already crushed into gore. Someone else has been murdered. I know him, Zhang Yong. He's the director of the Office for International Academic Exchanges. So Z was Zhang Yong. This image was reflected in the eyes of thousands through the screens of various devices. Among them was a pair of incisive peach blossom eyes, staring at the scene in wide-eyed disbelief. Xie Qingcheng was frozen from head to toe. The blood in his veins seemed to instantaneously turn into ice. He never could have possibly imagined that today, on this very day, during this video serial murder case, he would see this exact same scene, a car spontaneously crashing into a person, and then exploding into flames. It was as though an invisible hand had suddenly grabbed him by the neck and yanked him into a murky darkness. The image of Zhang Yong's body in the video overlapped with the nightmare he could never escape. The nightmare that had persisted for 19 years. and the answer that he had fruitlessly sought for so long before he had finally given up. As an icy darkness flooded through him, Xie Qingcheng's cup slipped from his cold fingers and crashed to the floor, shattering to pieces. Xie Qingcheng, what's wrong? He Yu had sensed that something was off about the person beside him. Xie Qingcheng's reaction to this photo was completely different from the first one. When Wang Jiankong had been murdered, Xie Qingcheng had reacted like a normal person. He'd looked at the photo, analyzed it, complied with police orders, and returned to his dorm. He had done what was needed and drawn his boundaries clearly. But after seeing Zhang Yong's photograph, Xie Qingcheng paid He Yu no attention at all. He didn't even offer a single word of analysis. Instead, after thinking for a moment, all he did was pick up his phone and dial a number, his face pale. Then, without another word, he walked into Xie Shui's bedroom and closed the door right in He Yu's face. He Yu only just managed to catch him saying to the person on the line, "Captain Zheng, it's me." That is the end of the chapter. Unfortunately, we have to stop there today. But it won't be long before we're back because of my schedule being all weird, but I'm thankful for that, honestly. I'll be streaming again on Monday, and when we return, we will be on chapter 38, which is called Xie Qingcheng, I've Never Forgotten You. That's the name of the chapter. I think Xiega is well-adjusted and fine. Oh yeah, totally. They're both just completely well-adjusted and fine. Totally fine. Yeah. That was... I cannot predict what is going to happen in these books. I just don't know. I know that we've been in the middle of a murder mystery, but every time it, like, we kind of forget about it for a little while, and then it comes up again, and every time I'm just like, I'm gobsmacked. What is happening? Wow, it's very windy outside right now. Anyway, so that was a stream, certainly. I'm having a lot of fun with this series, although it, of course, in Meat Bun style does get really dark sometimes. And I expect it to get darker. And, yeah, so Henry, I stopped thinking I could predict when I first heard psychological Ebola. That's smart, honestly. Like, you hear that and you're like, you know what? I don't know what's happening in these books. I have no idea what's happening in these books. Also, I briefly entertained the thought of watching Kichter's Volume 1 video about this series. But then I thought about it and then I was like, no, because the QJJ ones are kind of spoilery. Because Stitch had, like, read the fan translation initially. So she, like, knew the whole story. And I looked in the description of, like, the Volume 1 video for this series, and it said that I think one of them read some of the fan TL. So, like, they've read ahead. So I was like, on second thought, I'm not going to do that. I really wanted to. Like, because, I don't know, I have a lot of fun with those videos. And I wanted to see the Volume 1 video, but I was like, I know they're going to mention something that happens in a future volume, and I'm going to be spoiled, and then I'm going to be mad. So, they'd read up to the end of Volume 3. Okay. That's good to know, because maybe by the time that we get to... Yeah, by the time that we finish Volume 3, I can start watching them after that, maybe. That's good to know. Thank you. But yeah, I still, like, I probably won't watch the QJJ ones until I'm literally done with QJJ, which is going to be in so long from now, but you know, yeah. So, thank y'all for coming today. I'm having a blast. I'm really glad, even though it was a little bit funky at the end, my internet actually held out. I'm very impressed. So yeah, I will see y'all on Monday. Have a good one. Bye.